Hi, welcome to Tea Time in Olympia. I'm Lucas Miller, and with me today is Renata Rollins, Olympia City Council person.
Hi.
Hi, Renata, thank you for being with us today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite, Luke.
So tell us a little bit about your background, how long you've been in Olympia, and what you have done up to this point before getting elected to the City Council. I know you've been very active in working with the homeless community in Olympia. So tell us what led up to that, where your education was and
cool.
How you got to be who you are today.
Okay. the whole picture. Well, so I'm originally from Spokane. Moved out to Olympia right after high school to go to Evergreen. That was back in 2001. So like a lot of folks, was drawn to this community and have fallen in love with the community. Let's see, studied a whole lot of things at Evergreen, but focused on kind of journalism and communications and organizational leadership by the end, if that counts as a concentration. And went on and worked in journalism, left the area for a little bit, eventually made my way back in 2011 and got involved in the community. First, actually, through Occupy Olympia and the Occupy movement, and that was way back then. Feels like life was so different back in those days. Met a lot of good folks and continued being involved in a number of different organizations and projects and street outreach in the community. Some to mention. Well, the Downtown Ambassador program, I was among the first of the downtown ambassadors in Olympia and got to know the whole spectrum of the community there.
I remember seeing you and Chelsea walking around in the red jackets.
Yeah, the red shirts. Yeah, that was definitely a pivot point for me as far as my involvement in community and really just such a privilege to meet people from all walks of life and kind of with the mission of just like build relationships, do outreach with everybody who needs it, whether that's somebody on the street or whether that's a business owner or a worker or, just kind of the whole village project. So, and fell in love particularly with the street outreach component of that program and did street outreach through Capital Recovery Center, but also saw limitations with kind of the social service model, as far as it does good things, but it also is kind of just maintaining a system of helping people cope with inequality rather than working together to try to change conditions.
Now remind me, what was your position with the Capital Recovery Center?
The ambassador program was the first one, and then I worked as a outreach coordinator for the PATH program there.
Okay,
and I did go on to become one of the certified peer counselors, which was another program. So actually wore all three hats at different
I remember
times.
you had me come in and do a Trans 101 training for them at one point.
Yeah, that's right, which was super, super well received. People still haven't been there in a little while, but they really appreciated that.
Thanks, that's good for my ego.
Yeah.
Okay, and so you were there for a couple of years?
Yeah. I did the ambassador job for a year. I actually left that and then came back to CRC and worked with PATH not quite a year and a half.
Okay.
And did some peer counseling in that time as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And from there?
Well, like I alluded to, I felt some limitations in working in social service. And I guess I should backing up a little bit. Between my stints with Capital Recovery Center and and while I was there, I was involved with other kind of more grassroots groups, which some of which I helped start. And one of them, though, which I didn't help start, which was PIPE, which is, I think, where we met.
Both on the board.
Partners in Prevention Education. And that, I really found a home there and a connection because of my value and interest in kind of building this new, better world together, and centering the folks that are marginalized and most directly impacted by injustice and inequity. And I found in there kind of a hybrid, we could at PIPE consider PIPE a social service organization and a social justice organization, and kind of trying to make that bridge. And I really appreciated that, and that kind of influenced my organizing philosophy and practice, which led to creating an organization, a group called Well Wishers, which did a lot of work down at the Artesian Well, and then later Just Housing, which was once I left Capital Recovery Center, and I didn't know what was next. I didn't have a next job to go into. This was last February 2016. But I'm kind of one of those follow your heart sort of people. And oops, I smacked the microphone. Should we edit? Should we read?
I'm sure it's okay.
Okay.
You can still hear us, right?
Okay. I won't do that again. But I follow your heart, intuition kind of person, and just sometimes I've found that taking that leap off of a cliff is what brings the next best thing. And I put a lot into Just Housing and trying to strengthen relationships, not only between me and the street community, but providing opportunities for other housed people to do the same. Because I get feedback to this day from people that are housed that had certain opinions about the homelessness situation or about homeless people they see, and how they really experienced a personal transformation by building a relationship. So there, and that was, but I left that work. I felt like they were kind of going in their own direction, the Just Housing group, and it was a couple months later that, it's weird to say, but I just, it was kind of the small, quiet voice that in my mind that said, think about running for office. You care about the community, and it was that was 3 months after the federal election, the national election, which and so
there never was a better time.
I think I was in part of that wave of younger people and people from different backgrounds, being a queer person, being connected to the queer communities and the street community, and just really wanting to bring those relationships to the work.
Because of course GLBTQ people are disproportionately affected by, more are experiencing homelessness.
Yeah, there's so much intersection.
Unemployment.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much intersection there. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
Yeah. So tell us more, if you can, about what you see as the biggest issues affecting unhoused, street-dependent people, maybe especially youth and queer people in particular here in Olympia, and how you have approached those difficulties up to now, and how that's changed now that you're in the city government.
Sure. It's a widespread problem of a lack of housing, and that's we don't just see that here, but all up and down the West Coast. And I think that's really one. It's the people that are living homeless in our community and elsewhere. It's such a diverse group of people. It's not just like any group. It's not monolithic at all. Really, the one thing everyone has in common is they don't have four walls to live in. Right. And most folks, this is not everyone knows this, that 80% of people that are homeless in this area, and this is generally true in other states and areas, is 80% of the folks are homeless in their county of origin. So these are folks that...
The county in which they were born, or...
Right, yeah, or where they've lived for a long time. Okay. So this is really a symptom of rising housing prices and people that kind of were able to get by and make it, all of a sudden their income isn't cutting it.
So it's a lack of... It's about not being able to afford the housing that exists. It's not that there aren't... The physical housing exists, but it's too expensive for most people to access. Is that
correct? Is that and although there isn't nearly enough housing, period. I mean, yeah, there's a real shortage. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are you finding that as you work with street-dependent communities, are you finding that GLBTQ people or any other particular group within that diverse population are having more difficulty accessing housing? Or, I mean, obviously there are issues of intersectionality that go on, and, certain groups are, likely to have less access than others.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And whether that has to do with just lacking the income and wealth disparity certainly plays into that. I'd say also, disparity around criminal records, which affects, some communities, and disparity around mental health treatment and gaps there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess there are also other, it's some housing is very high barrier, anything from homeless shelters to actual like houses or apartments. You have to have certain kinds of ID, or you have to be able to come up with a deposit, or you have to have some kind of a good rental record.
Right. Yeah, that's
those. Yeah.
Yeah, and when we have this shortage of supply, even if the cost were lower, without enough supply, there's landlords can and do cherry pick, and so it's very it's like, well, we'll toss that one out, and so yeah, and certainly LGBTQ community faces more discrimination in housing, and that can be really hard to prove. I mean, I know somebody that had to leave her situation just this past week that she was renting, and seemed like some pretty clear transphobic undertones or overtones in the communication with the person she was renting from. But I mean, you need money to have, to have a lawyer if you're really going to pursue that, and really she just needs a place to live. She doesn't need to be tied up in a lawsuit. So,
Okay. So what can the city council or what will the city council do to address some of these issues? How, I guess I understand you ran for and got elected to the city council, because you were passionate about these issues. What success or what roadblocks have you run into in trying to get these issues dealt with by the city?
Yeah. Well, I'll just say, being on city council, and it's been just a bit over 2 months, is definitely an exercise in patience, and and certainly love, and also it was a major grieving period for me, to be honest, at first, about how nothing was going to change fast. And when we, and that was, that was hard. It's been it's been up and down for me, just emotionally, being part of the council. It's definitely a privilege, and I'm glad to be there and be able to contribute. The first year on council, and it's a 4-year term, but the first year is kind of more about getting your feet under you and contributing to conversations that started years ago, right? And because there's kind of that lag, which I've been able to do, but I'm definitely in learning mode, where it's just like, this is a whole new system. This is a whole new culture to me.
So the learning curve is pretty steep.
The learning curve is steep. Like I say, patience. Patience is a virtue, and it's hard because I'm connected with people and care deeply about people who are very vulnerable and suffering, and it's having to recognize that the place we are in today was decades, if not centuries, in the making. I mean, I think these are big economic forces, and it's kind of this, where we are today is sort of inevitable. How we turn the ship around will be interesting. I mean, certainly I have some ideas, and one exciting thing is we will be having a mini retreat as a council to actually talk about and come to some direction around what we're going to do about the imminent homelessness crisis. I mean, we have some great things in the works down the years. Voters passed the Home Fund, for example, in Olympia, which is 0.1% sales tax, which is going to go to a dedicated fund for affordable housing. So that's really exciting. It's modeled off of other cities. But it's going to take a while. And what we really need to do is figure out, what do we do about the crisis right now that impacts folks that are homeless and the rest of us in different ways. And it's another funny thing about council. We don't, because of open public meeting laws, we can't just all get together and talk about something except for designated publicized meetings, like Tuesday night. And those tend to be more, for better or worse, they tend to be a lot pretty, everything's pretty planned. The agenda's planned well in advance. There's not a whole lot of discussion that I've seen, which I'd like to see more. I think sometimes community members would like to see a little more transparency there. But really, it's more just I'll have a conversation with one other council member. We'll kind of brainstorm or whatever, or, oh, this is happening. What do you think about that? It's a lot more one-on-one than the whole group. And so this retreat actually should be, I don't want to oversell it, but I think it's going to be a watershed moment, because we're finally going to get all 7 of us to really say, okay, can't
Without
deny
the whole
we have a
city
big
sitting
problem.
there staring at you.
It'll be a public retreat, but it'll be not a regular Tuesday meeting. It'll be probably, hoping for a weekend day, because it's going to take some time, and there are going to be some tough conversations, and I think we'll be expected to be honest and mindful and be vulnerable about what our hopes and fears are, and come up with something that can work in the interim, how to mitigate the harms that homelessness causes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your particular hopes and fears for, what you would like to see in the future? What are your ideas about what the city can or could do? I mean, I think some of it is about recognition and recognizing, kind of like I was saying earlier, that these are really large forces that have brought us here, and to some degree, we are very much in react mode, just the same way if there was a natural disaster. It's we can't control the weather, but we can choose how we respond. And I think there's I'd like to see some adjustment in how we define success and how we think about success, because we're not going to
have enough housing right away.
Right.
We're not going to just, people aren't just going to disappear. I mean, I hear from
Right, yeah,
community members
yeah.
that honestly do wish that people would just disappear, or they almost describe like a concentration camp sort of a
Yeah.
solution. And so we're not going to do that. But
Well, I hope not.
yeah, well, it will not have my
Yeah.
vote. No, I don't think anyone would support that. But what we do need to provide are places where people are allowed to be and
Yeah.
live and go about their daily life, even if that's not in a shelter. I think, I think we're looking at, and this is just this one idea, but one I support is kind of a mitigation site is what they do in Tacoma. So it's not so much like we've had a small tent city in Olympia
Okay,
before,
yeah.
Camp Quixote years ago. This would be more pretty no frills, to serve, probably aiming to serve a larger number of people, and in order to protect from public health of the campers and the rest of the community, having bathrooms, maybe
Right.
hand washing stations, trash service. I mean, a lot of the harms that are associated with unregulated encampments are because there's nowhere to do those basic human things that we all do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So what we have right now, when we haven't designated appropriate places, we're seeing a bunch of people in a whole bunch of inappropriate places. And I think that's on us as a council and other councils. I mean, it's other cities too in the county, but for speaking in Olympia, to designate some places so people can have some modicum of stability, some modicum of safety. Yeah. And that's not, people don't like that. I mean, like, it doesn't sound good to think like, oh, so we're just accepting that people are camping, and it's like, but yeah, we have to. There's there's over 1,000.
It sounds like a short-term solution, but a necessary step.
Right.
To get to the larger solution of making sure that everybody has secure, affordable housing, and that we don't have to have, people camping in places
in
where
the wealthiest country.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So it's definitely an emergency measure, a mitigation measure. I think there's also, we might want to explore, the fact that a lot of people are car camping, and a lot of those folks I know are people that are fleeing domestic violence. It's like they've got to get out. They don't have anywhere else to go, but they have a car.
Right.
So can we work out some kind of a safe parking lot for people that are living in their
or create
vehicles.
More domestic violence shelters.
Yeah. I mean, shelters are never a bad thing. Although I know a lot of folks that don't feel safe in shelters, and so they want to kind of go off and be in their own. Yeah.
Well, I mean, until very recently, trans people in particular didn't feel safe in a lot of the shelters that segregate on the basis of assigned sex at birth.
Yeah.
And it's comparatively recently that some of the local shelters have started, trying to make their spaces more accessible to trans people.
Yeah, interfaith
especially
works
maybe non-binary identified people.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good change. And it's interesting. I know. I mean, historically, there's a shelter in town that has not been, I would say, particularly competent or welcoming for LGBTQ people and Salvation Army. But in Las Vegas, the Salvation Army has a shelter specifically for transgender youth. So good things are possible.
That's
yeah.
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it was.
I've not always heard the best things about the Salvation Army as far as being, GLBTQ friendly, but that's good to know.
Yeah. maybe something will happen.
So it sounds like you're talking about, doing some short-term things to create spaces where people can basically be homeless until they find proper housing. But, also in the long term, it sounds like we need to knock down some of the barriers to getting affordable housing.
Right.
And appropriate housing.
Right.
That sounds like including, breaking down various kinds of discrimination on the part of landlords or state agencies or whoever. And also maybe a better understanding of the causes of homelessness, like domestic violence, like, improperly addressed mental health issues or substance abuse issues.
Right. Well, yeah, and
do you have hopes that the council will start to delve into those questions?
I do, and I have hopes that the community as a whole will. You hit on something there that about just kind of some of the discrimination issues, and I don't know if this would be a city initiative or more of a community campaign, but there are some really cool campaigns out there in other cities around reducing the stigma and discrimination that people who are homeless face. One of them is called the Just Say Hello campaign that started in Seattle. There's one called Familiar Faces, where it's just about trying to reducing some of the social anxieties and fear and discrimination that exists. And I'd like to see something like that happen here. So whether that's something that the city does or a community, I still love community organizing, so that's something I have my eye on.
Well, tell us a little more about that. What is that? What does the Just Say Hello program entail?
Just Say Hello is really the one that's really caught my attention, and it was. I mean, it's founded on the premise that if we think about this big problem of like how do we solve homelessness and like how long is it going to take and all that, it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
What we really just need to do is start, and the start in the beginning is, as the name says, just saying hello, building relationships, getting to know people that are facing significantly different realities than we are.
Yeah.
And it caught my attention because it's something I've tried to do in my work in various different community organizing, grassroots stuff, and also in my writing is just kind of try to tell some stories of people who, like I say, are facing very different realities, very unimaginable realities, I think, to a lot of folks. And and I think it's kind of close that empathy gap and just to reduce the fear. So the campaign has stories of, everything from people that participate in the campaign literally just saying hello, to relationships developing, and maybe like, they find out that someone really only needed like $300 to clear something with their driver's license, which will then allow them to get on and apply for work with the skills that they already have, because there's a lot of really awesome skilled people out there. So just those kind of things where, which can sometimes be a lot. I don't know, I'm really coming around to the belief that it's these kind of things that seem little and these little interactions that change the system from within.
Yeah. Small beginnings can have large long-term effects.
Yes, the ripple and the fractal and.
Well, of course, and that's been kind of what Partners in Prevention Education has, had as one of its kind of core values, that building relationships within the community, and just going out and engaging with, the homeless youth population, and making friends there, and
building those partnerships across the differences. Absolutely. and it's so transformative.
Yeah.
Shout out to Rosalinda.
Yes, yes.
Rosalinda Noriega, who founded
Partners in Prevention Education and is now the executive director of Pizza Klatch.
Pizza Klatch, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Community treasure.
Yes, definitely one of our community heroes, I think. So tell us a little bit about your campaign. What was it like running for office and getting elected?
Cool, yeah. A lot of fun, a lot of work, but I did enjoy quite a bit of it. The hardest part was fundraising. I've never been good at it, even like that's what we're supposed to do on the board of a nonprofit.
I imagine that's the toughest part of,
yeah. So I really learned a lot there. I just kind of sink or swim and ended up doing quite well. But that was hard. A lot of doorbelling and phone banking, and that was in a town Olympia's size. That voter contact, that direct contact, really makes a difference, and that happened to be the part I really liked. So that was pretty much daily. The campaign started. I filed in May of this past year, and we had the primary election on August 1st, where the top 2 out of the 3 candidates running for position 6 seat got to move on, and then the general election in November. So kind of 2 different phases. Had really great volunteers and campaign management as well, because it's never about, it's kind of, it's like a TV show. There's the talent, like the person in the front, and then there's like everybody else making it happen as well, and counting on those doors as well, and just being encouraging and telling their friends and putting up yard signs. But it was intense. I'm really lucky I wasn't working at the time. I don't know how people that work full time and campaign on top of that, let alone serve on city council on top of that, how they do it. I don't think I could. I mean, I think the money's better if you have another job, but I really put in a lot of time into the campaign, and also had times where I just had to step completely back, like a week at a time even, where it's just like, I need to recenter because I'm getting too stressed. So.
Is it more or less stressful now that you've actually been elected? And
it's so far it's less hours.
Okay.
I mean, the campaign was full time, and it really felt like nonstop. I mean, because there's an end date, and it's so compressed. It's just like you feel like every waking hour, like if you get an email, even if it's 10:30 at night, like you got to answer it. And now it's like it's a 4-year timeline, and I'm really just focusing on learning. It's a lot of learning.
Well, because the position itself is only part-time.
Yeah, it's considered part-time. Yeah. The pay is certainly part-time.
Yeah, as you were just telling me, you don't even get health care as a council member. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So, open state exchange for me, but it works for me. I actually, because of my, I'm a writer and do the community work as well, and also I just don't entirely buy into the overwork culture. I don't want all of my life to be on the clock.
Not a natural workaholic then.
No, I mean, and I have that in my past, but part of that I contribute to I think contributes to life not being as good. I mean, I went through a lot, and also managing just my own mental health, and so it's important for me to have that balance. And it might be less than some people on paper, might look like less than some, but it's what I can offer.
Mm-hmm. Are you able to bring your past skills like journalism into your position, into your work now? I'm
learning to. I think with council, at least the way I look at it, there's kind of the formal role where you're a board member of a municipal corporation called City of Olympia.
Right. Yeah.
And that part of it is very, very formal. And that's the part I have the most to learn about, because it's such an unfamiliar. But as far as but I think the second hat, and where there's the most potential, and at least what I've always seen the most potential, is being a community leader. And that's all about, I think, communicating with constituents, listening to constituents, even organizing with constituents around changes we want to see, because it's not, like during the campaign, another person running for council, Clark Gilman, who was incumbent, and he won. He used to say at forums and speaking events, being on council is not like, you don't just get a magic wand, you don't just get to like rub a lamp and get 3 wishes and then boom, like your idea, like you got it. I mean, it's this whole bigger system, and a lot of it is about the community. I mean, if we take a 180 degree turn, there's backlash that can actually make things worse for, as far as for the likelihood of achieving goals or achieving the longevity, having the longevity of goals. So it's all a process.
So I'd like to hear a little bit more about other work you've done with the GLBTQ community.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. My partner's trans, so we are definitely in the community. Let's see, work. I mean, coming back to the just community work in general for a second, I really like at PIPE and other community initiatives, the focus on centering marginalized people, marginalized voices. So been involved with PIPE, helped put on, with you and with others, the Transgender Day of Remembrance. What year was that? 2015 maybe?
No, it was earlier than that.
Earlier than that, okay, 14, yeah. So, dang, yeah.
That was 13 or 14, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, gosh, I mean, I attend the Pizza Clutch Gala, always a great event. Yeah, unless I mostly just believe in bridge building, and so kind of by being myself and being connected to different parts of this community. Just like to, I spoke today at the Panorama City out in Lacey, and they wanted to have some speakers to talk about how to support and encourage women and people of color to run for office. And even the topic didn't include LGBTQ people, but because of who I am, it's like I'm not just a woman, I'm a queer woman, and so bringing kind of that intersectionality to that discussion, and just being not a representative, but just being a visible person.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, if you can expand on that, what do you think as a queer, holder of public office, what do you think is the most important thing in encouraging queer and trans people to run for and hold offices, or to, get involved in the civic process?
Yeah, cool. Some of it is, I would say, it's networking. So reach out to me. I'll meet with you for coffee and let you know kind of what the landscape looks like. But
how to run for city council in 10 easy lessons.
yeah. I'll write a manual.
Yeah.
I like manuals. But it's, I think it's really about, and especially those of us that come from marginalized communities, experience multiple marginalization, have experienced discrimination. I think what it takes, at least in a community like Olympia, where all the positions on city council, for example, are at large. Like we don't have neighborhoods that we represent. You kind of you have to be able to figure out a way to, if you want to run to win, to reach that broad audience while still being authentic to yourself. And a lot of times, I guess that comes down to learning how to I think it's about communicating values, and because that's something that can transcend differences. And there's a marked difference. In the primary campaign, I was a lot more focused on talking about injustices, and then in the general, it became a lot more about a positive vision, which is, I think, that something that people can rally behind.
All right.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? You've got another almost 4 years on the council.
Yeah, almost.
And obviously you have a lot of goals, I hope, that you're going to be pursuing through that. And are you going to run for re-election, do you think, after that? Can you run for re-election?
Yeah, it's certainly a possibility. I'm not sure. I would love to, within 4 years, have a human rights commission established at the city of Olympia. That's one of my kind of bigger picture goals. And then we'll see. I mean, my personal mission statement in life is building the beloved community, a world where many worlds fit. If you get an email from me, that's at the bottom of the signature. And this was a unique opportunity to be able to run. It felt like the right time. The energy was there to be able to bring most people have a different resume running in. So I'm a community builder. And whether I do that, whether I try to run again or just find another outlet for that work, that's what's next. I said, I'm kind of let my heart take me, and intuitive, kind of day by day. But I always community oriented. To me, that is the only path to survival.
Yeah. So, is there any message you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Sure. I'm really coming around to respect the need for bridges in this community, and between communities. And I guess my message is, if you don't see a bridge, be a bridge. And that I think we all need healing. I mean, we live under, in my opinion, a really unjust system that harms ultimately everyone, and some a lot more than others.
Now more than ever.
Now more than ever. But it's been hundreds of years of that history on this continent, and to focus on what are the ways that we can heal ourselves and our communities. I feel that's really needed right now.
Okay. Renata Rollins, Olympia City Council member, thank you very much for being with us on Tea Time. That's all for now. I'm Lucas Miller. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening.
Thank you.